Hello, my name is Barbara Duffield, and I am the Executive Director of SchoolHouse Connection.
And I am Patricia Julianelle, and I am the Senior Strategist for Program Advancement and Legal Affairs at SchoolHouse Connection.
SchoolHouse Connection is a national organization, a nonprofit advocacy organization working to overcome homelessness through education. And we are so happy to be with you today to be part of Maslow Project's Giving Tuesday event, Giving Together for Continued Resilience. We are huge fans of the Maslow Project and have enjoyed a strong partnership with them for well over a decade now. Amazing people doing amazing work. And particularly right now at a time when the need has never been greater. We know that the impact of the pandemic on children, youth, and families experiencing homelessness has been severe. Even before the pandemic, over 1.3 million children and youth experienced homelessness. And that's just who we knew through public school systems, with an equal number of children under the age of 5 experiencing homelessness, and even more youth experiencing homelessness on their own. So it's a much bigger population than most people realize, and also a very hidden population with very unique and very substantial needs that need to be addressed holistically. In particular, education. Education really is the long-term path out of homelessness. Research supports that. We know that the single greatest risk factor for continuing to be homeless as a young adult is not having a GED or high school degree. We know that the impacts of homelessness start really early in the life of a young child and continue. And yet schools are there with a ready-made system, if resourced and if trained and if partnered, to make a huge difference and to really stop that trajectory into future adult homelessness. So again, we couldn't be any more pleased to have such an amazing partner. And we'll talk a little bit more too about why Maslow Project is a highlight nationally as well as locally and in the state.
Absolutely. And I'm glad that you talked in your intro, Barbara, about unaccompanied youth and also young children, because that's always been something that I've been really impressed with about Maslow Project. You know, when we look for our national models and our national experts, I think we have our go-tos for older youth and we have our go-tos for younger children and, you know, sometimes in the higher ed or K-12 sphere, but Maslow's kind of the go-to for everything because they do everything well from birth all the way up through transitions into higher education. And even different aspects of homelessness. Like I know they've done a lot of work helping families resettle after the fires in Oregon. So they're kind of really approaching homelessness from so many different aspects. And I also find that they do really great work with understanding some of the disproportionalities in homelessness. So at SchoolHouse Connection, we've done some national research using the Youth Risk Behavior Survey to help get information about high school students experiencing homelessness in particular. And we've been able to find out quite a few things. For example, that students of color are more than twice as likely to experience homelessness than white students. We've also found out that LGBTQ students are about twice as likely to experience homelessness. And then recently, we've been able to look into data on students who are transgender, who are more than 9 times more likely to experience homelessness than cisgender youth. And then we just finished a project looking at pregnant and parenting teens, and they were 10 times more likely to experience homelessness than teens who were not pregnant or parenting. So I think any program that wants to really do great outreach and great work with youth experiencing homelessness has to be looking at all these different populations and trying to target interventions for them specifically. And I know Maslow does that, and they look a lot at the mental health needs and physical health needs as well of the students.
Exactly. And I think that's another piece that's particularly critical right now is this holistic view of responding to youth homelessness, understanding that while yes, housing is a tremendous underlying problem and a significant cause of homelessness, it can also be a symptom of a lot of other things that are going on. And, you know, housing in and of itself doesn't end homelessness in the long term. And you really have to have a comprehensive, holistic view. So I think when we think about what Maslow's doing and this idea of stabilize, engage, and thrive, you know, the motto for the Maslow Project, it's exactly that: stabilize through basic needs. So yes, housing, food, healthcare, all of those pieces, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and then engage. Young people and families have to be partners in this. They have to lead the work. Their voices matter. So the engagement of families and youth, and Maslow doing that as well, and then thrive. And that's the belief that these children and youth can be anything they want to be with support, that we're not lowering our expectations, but we know that they have every bit of talent as any other child, and we have to show that and support that along the way. So that motto really encapsulates that. And the other thing I was thinking too is, at this moment in history, we have this unprecedented opportunity with the American Rescue Plan, homeless children and youth funds. And for the first time, the US Department of Education is talking about things like wraparound services, encouraging communities to do navigators. And it's like, well, Maslow Project's been doing that for decades. So in many ways, an advance of where we are nationally, and really just a model for many other communities nationwide.
Yeah, what you're saying about thriving made me think about resilience, which I know is part of the theme for the event today. It's also something that I do a lot of presentations about, is resilience, and that idea that everyone is born with innate resilience, and resilience is beautiful and something to be celebrated, but it's not miraculous. But what youth and families need is to build up that resilience, to strengthen it, to have the basic needs, and then also kind of that person to believe in them, so that they can really let their resilience shine. And that's something that I know I've seen Maslow Project do. I've been talking to them lately about things they've done specifically during the pandemic, and the way that they don't just sort of do the immediate response. So yes, we're doing distance learning, and people need a hotspot and a Chromebook. That's obvious, and lots of schools have done that. But then it's thinking through the third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh step. So are we going to have a family of 5 on one hotspot? And do you know what that's like to try to connect to a video meeting on a hotspot? And then if you're sharing it with 5 other people, that's not going to work. What about showing your background when you're in a motel, or even in a car, or you're in a tent, or you're in somebody's living room? You don't want all your friends to know where you are. So, I know that Maslow has gone that extra step of saying, here's your technology. Now let's sit down. Let's help you set it up. Let's help you understand it. Let's teach you how to use some fun backgrounds. How can you engage with your teachers using emojis or other things, instead of maybe having your sound on? Because maybe, again, there's a lot of background noise that you don't want your peers to hear. So, the way that they've really listened to families and youth, heard their concerns, and then gone that extra mile to meet those concerns, that's another thing that I think has really been a national model, and something that I know that I've shared with other school districts and other programs, to say, well, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? Another thing that I've been talking to them about lately is, so many students, even if they're back in-person learning now, they lost a lot during distance learning because they had bad connections, or because they couldn't attend all their classes because of homelessness. So looking at making sure that those students get credit for what they did last year, then figure out what are they missing, what credits didn't they get, and what are some creative ways that we can help them get credit. So I know they're doing things like helping students get credits for life skills classes, or for other things, so that they can kind of be earning back a little bit what they missed, but also staying on track this year to keep moving forward. So it's like you said, it's a very holistic approach. I think you used that word, and really engaging students and families.
And this is part of the long-term goal towards reducing overall homelessness. We know that so many adults who experience homelessness were first homeless as children. Many youth who experienced homelessness were first homeless as children. So from the long-term perspective, if we're ever going to get ahead of homelessness for all populations, it does require focusing on children, youth, and families. It does require the holistic view. And it also requires speaking out. And if I go through and I think about all the emails I've gotten from various Maslow staff, everything from, the New York Times article that Mary was featured in, I think in 2009, to emails about individual students, there's a willingness to be that voice, and to be a voice with, and to be, sometimes being really fierce in terms of making the needs known, and being willing to make the invisible visible, so that the entire community, state, and nation can see these children and youth, and see the successes that they can have with the appropriate support.
Yeah, they really are very strategic and very big picture oriented, at the same time as fighting for every single student. Do you remember the back and forth that we had with them a few years ago about a student who wanted to play sports and wasn't being allowed, and they just would not let it go, and they fought and fought and fought because they know how important extracurricular activities are to stay in school, to get into college, for your mental health and your mental well-being. And so they are like that with every student. And then also at the same time, they're thinking big picture, how can we be looking to end homelessness, get more housing, support our families and everything that they need. It's really inspiring to me. I love always talking to them and with them and learning what they're doing.
Me too. And you're reminding me now of another email exchange we had about students who face barriers for financial aid on the FAFSA, and some of the ridiculous back and forth and bureaucracy, really needless hurdles that young people face. And again, not letting go, not saying like, oh, you're right, they need to have a parent to sign, but like, I don't think that's right. Reaching out to us, confirming what they knew already, getting back up, and then continuing to push forward, recognizing that the jobs that pay living wages today require some form of education beyond high school. And so these barriers that we can overcome with advocacy, with policy change, with wraparound supports can really be life-changing.
Absolutely. They are doing the hard work in communities, small and rural and suburban, and making a huge difference for families and youth. And like you said, that long view of this is really how we need to intervene if we want to make a meaningful dent in this problem. So I personally feel very honored and humbled that we've been asked to speak a little bit about Maslow today, and I'm just happy to do it. And I hope that this event is a big success, because if it's a success for Maslow Project, that means it's going to be a success for children and youth in Southern Oregon.
Yes, I completely concur and echo that, and I wish Maslow Project and all their supporters and participants all the best.
Yes, have a great event, everyone. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.